The Republican presidential candidates get back to work after a short Christmas break.
Yeah, they've just 1 week left before the first actual contest of the campaign. The Iowa Caucus. National correspondent Dean Reynolds in Des Moines with the very latest for us this morning. Hi, Dean.
Hi, Chris. Sorry, it's cold out here. In this last week before the campaign, the caucuses, the candidates are doing everything possible to drum up support in the most attention-grabbing way they can.
Michelle Bachmann, Rick Perry, Newt Gingrich, and Mitt Romney will take to the road, trying to overcome the momentum that Ron Paul and his well-organized effort have been generating here. Paul will be visiting central and western Iowa starting Wednesday. He is bunched at the top with Romney and Gingrich in the latest polling here, posing a question few would have asked just months ago. But Paul's rise has been accompanied by closer scrutiny from the news media of some of the controversial publications he oversaw some 20 years ago. Newsletters that contained disparaging articles on blacks and Jews. Paul has disowned the content, said someone else wrote the newsletters, and in any case insists they do not reflect his views.
Nobody talked about it for 20 years until they found out that the message of liberty was making progress. And everybody knows I didn't write them and they're not my sentiments, so it's sort of politics as usual.
Fresh ads are also airing. Rick Perry's takes a swipe at Washington lawmakers.
If Washington's the problem, why trust a congressman to fix it?
Mitt Romney concentrates on the economy.
It is a moral imperative for America to stop spending more money than we take in.
Meanwhile, Perry and Gingrich suffered a setback over the weekend, failing to gather enough signatures to qualify for the Virginia Republican primary, a development a Gingrich aide likened to Pearl Harbor. As campaign director Michael Crawford put it, Newt and I agreed that the analogy is December 1941. We have experienced an unexpected setback, he said, but we will regroup and refocus with increased determination, commitment, and positive action.
Now, Gingrich says he'll focus on the economy all this week and try to remain positive, though he is running an attack ad in which he calls Mitt Romney a Massachusetts moderate. And around here, Chris, them's fighting words.
Yes, also joining us to look at the Republican race this morning is Chief Political Correspondent Jan Crawford, who is in Washington for us this morning. Good to have you both with us now. But, Dean, I'm going to start with you since you're out there freezing in Iowa right now. Ron Paul, like you just mentioned, currently ahead, albeit by a small margin. And like you mentioned in your piece a second ago, he's really being heavily scrutinized right now. And some of those extremist newsletters from in the past are now starting to surface more and more. Being on the ground there and talking with the people, what are Ron Paul's chances right now? I know he's polling well, but what are people really saying about him?
Well, his chances are very, very good. He has a very deep, experienced organization carried over from 2008, and they are deeply committed. Boy, you write something that is slightly critical of Ron Paul on blogs or say something on television, and you really hear about it from his very fervent supporters. So, yes, he has a very good shot at this. The polls show him up. And right now, with the others sort of flailing around like Gingrich has been deflating lately, his chances are very, very good.
Yeah, Jan, Dean mentioned Gingrich deflating lately. He said that his campaign advisors likened all of this to Pearl Harbor, what's been going on, these setbacks recently. Do you think that it's possible for him to get back in this race, and what would it take?
Well, sure. I mean, Gingrich says he's picking up steam, he's picking up staff, he's getting support, but organization matters. And unlike Ron Paul, Gingrich doesn't have a lot of it, and he doesn't have a lot of time to build it. Now, one thing, too, I mean, he clearly has been hurt by all these negative ads that we've seen in the last week or two. Ron Paul's, in particular, was devastating in reminding voters about Gingrich's past. He painted him as this crony capitalist and the ultimate Washington insider. Now, those ads were just run in the early states, but we covered them in the media, so people across the country saw them, and Gingrich just didn't counter them effectively. He kind of just complained about them and sounded like a whiner. So, I mean, as a result, I mean, we've seen his support drop about a point a day. Mm-hmm. And his failure to get on the ballot in his home state is really an embarrassment. I mean, that just raises more questions about whether he can stick this out for the long haul.
Mm-hmm. Jan, where does he have to place in Iowa to stay competitive?
Well, Gingrich has said he'll be happy placing in the top 3 or 4, but he needs to do better than that if he's going to somehow keep this momentum going. But the problem for him is reflected in another new poll that we see out where voters in Iowa say they just don't have a strong emotional connection with him. They don't identify with him. They say he doesn't share their values. In Iowa, just like Dean was suggesting, voters say they have the strongest emotional connection with Ron Paul.
Dean, let's bring you in for the final word here. Rick Santorum, Rick Perry, Michelle Bachmann. I know they're all trying to stay competitive, obviously. What does one of them have to do in these final days here to break through, and can they?
Well, they can. They have to get their common supporters to coalesce behind one of them. They all drink essentially from the same trough, evangelical, social conservatives. And the latest poll that we've seen out here is that Rick Perry has been showing some momentum, actually closing in on Gingrich. So if he can keep that going over the last week and draw from the likes of Bachmann and Santorum, he might do very well. The others have to try to do the opposite to him, but that doesn't look very likely right now. If there's any movement at all, it's probably Perry.
All right. CBS's Jan Crawford in Washington for us. Dean Reynolds freezing in Iowa for us this morning. We thank you both very much. Good to talk with both of you.